I haven't had a guest who is a CTO or who is the tech guy in a company, right?
They sent a sample data of 40 TB. That was their sample data. Okay, so that really blew my mind. We also saw a lot of incoming requests from NRIs. That is what helped me, build more conviction in this segment. NRIs are a set of people who are very underserved. Everything in Belong as of today is plug and play. The moment you see a bot on a chat, the first thing that you type is, I want to talk to a human. I do that because I know you are not going to be able to resolve what I have.
Hello all, welcome to the Home Advantage where we decode NRI finances. Today we have with us Ayush Singh, the co-founder and CTO of Belong. Welcome Ayush.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. So Ayush, this is a new experience for me. So I've done podcasts before, but I haven't had a guest who is a CTO or who is the tech guy in a company, right? So I'm sure we'll have a lot to learn and understand from you. So to start the podcast, I want to understand your journey of how did you get into tech? What was your educational background? How did you end up being a part of Belong? So over to you.
Okay. So I enjoyed engineering journey during my college, but even before that, I got into computers during my school only. So I had this opportunity to work on computers for the very first time when I was in class 4th. Standard 4th, my school introduced computers.
Wow, okay.
Okay, so I think a lot of it has to be attributed to that course. So class 4th onwards, I had this opportunity to work on computers. Throughout my schooling, I had worked. More and more I learned on about computers. I became more and more fascinated with them. Both my parents are doctors. Obviously, they wanted me to be a doctor also, but they never actually said, no, you can't do engineering, you have to be a doctor. They left it to my choice, and I opted for engineering, and specifically computer science engineering. So I really enjoy computer science, and I'm sort of a workaholic also. So both of them add up.
Yeah. So when you say you were interested in computers from your 4th standard, so back then what were you doing on the computers? I mean,
back then there was a programming language called Logo.
Okay.
Okay, it had a small turtle with which you can make squares, rectangles, polygons, multiple shapes. That was mostly what I used to do as a part of course material only. Then they started teaching us more about algorithms in class 5th onwards. So I got introduced to a lot of computing topics at a very early age.
So you're the kind of person who would experiment yourself. You learn new stuff.
Yes, okay. I do, because it piqued my interest and I started loving it more and more.
The only thing I loved about computers was the games back then. So
that came later in my life.
Okay.
So at that point in time, games were a privilege to have. Back in, should I say 1990s or should I not say?
Yeah, I mean, you can say.
Back in 1990s,
okay,
when I started working on computers for the first time, games were there, but it was a privilege to have a computer where you can play games. So I started working on DOS first. So that was the first operating system that I worked on. Games were there, but it wasn't really a thing for me. Later on, jump to 2000s, early 2000s. That's when gaming in my life started picking up. I actively played games, and I always thought that one day I will make a game, and that's how I got into engineering, with an idea of I'll make it myself one day.
Okay.
Haven't made it yet, but yeah. That was a big push.
So back in college, right? So you passed that school phase, you entered college, you're passionate about computer science. So did you always want to be an entrepreneur? Is that something you always had in your mind?
Not really, not at that point in time. I always wanted to make things. In the school time also, during my college phase also, I really enjoyed making things. That one joy of making new things led me towards the entrepreneurial journey.
Right. So as soon as you were done with college, so did you take up a job or did you build something? So
Yes, once college was done, I joined a company, Indus Valley Partners. That was my first company. There, I again started working as a computer software engineer only. It was an entry level job, but I am very glad that I took that job because it taught, learned myself, I taught myself a lot of things during my engineering. But to be able to implement them in production for the first time, IVP was the first company which allowed me to do that. I worked with a lot of people there who were very senior to me. I was a fresher and they had already been working in the industry for over a decade at that point in time. So they had seen that entire journey and they were kind enough to teach a lot of things to me, what to do and what not to do in production. So I'm very grateful for that exposure.
So I think having a mentor at that stage of your life is very important.
Having a good mentor at that stage of your life is very important.
Right. So from Indus Valley, did you directly enter entrepreneurship or?
No. After that, I got an opportunity to work with Oracle. So while at Indus Valley Partners, I learned a lot. It was in finance. I learned a lot about Fintech and like the original Fintech journey of mine started there. It did things, the ticket size, let's just say, was higher, but it was not at scale.
Okay.
At Oracle, I learned how things work at scale. So when I joined Oracle, I started working in value chain planning. I think like there is no hard data or hard fact behind it, but I think almost everybody on this planet is using a product which has been planned through that software. The manufacturing of that product, at least one product in your life you are using, which has been planned on that software. Value chain planning, it is that huge.
Okay.
I think it was one of those things where I could, see how things work at scales. So some things which I used to ignore from a development perspective in my previous company, it cannot be ignored. It could not be ignored at that scale because I started understanding the cost associated with scale. It's not just that you write some code, okay, and then you start throwing hardware at it. No, hardware is expensive. You can't just throw hardware at it.
Right.
And at Oracle scale, you just can't afford to throw hardware at it. So one example which I always give to other younger engineers that work with me is they write code, they think that okay, I have written this code, let's just put it in production and it will scale automatically. That is one. So at Oracle there were multiple clients who introduced me to the meaning of the word scale. So there was some issue that was there in the software, and we generally ask the clients at give us a sample data where this issue is happening. They sent a sample data of 40 TB. That was their sample data. Okay, so that really blew my mind. Okay, this is the sample data that they have sent. Okay, and then I started realizing what scale means and the amount that of engineering that goes in handling that kind of data.
Right.
So that is one. Before that, I used to think, yeah, fine, add more CPU, add more hard disk. It's great. No, it doesn't. So that was something very, very different. So that scale is very different.
Yeah. So in the first company, you understood about finance and fintech.
Finance and what not to do in production.
Okay,
that was very important.
The mistakes, you learn from mistakes, all this stuff. Yeah.
Because they were very kind enough to guide me through that journey.
It was the first company also.
It was the first company.
Yeah. In the second company, you understood about scale.
Scale and the cost that comes with scale.
And then after Oracle, the next step?
After Oracle, I had sort of been in touch on and off with Ankur during this time.
So how do you know Ankur? sir?
Ankur and I are childhood friends. We went to
Okay.
the same school. He and I both did our matriculation from Mount Assisi.
Mhm.
And after that, we went different ways
Okay.
for our plus two and college.
Mhm.
We were in touch on and off
Mm.
during this time. But I think first time Ankur was doing another startup that time. I think he was doing Cards Deco. I don't know if he has this.
Mm.
So that time was the first time that he had reached. He was working on something, and then I randomly just asked him, "Ki, what are you doing?" I said, "Hey, I'm working on this." He's like, "Fine." That time I had no intention of leaving my job. or for
Safety
doing
was the
anything.
priority.
No, I was not. Like, I was very happy working for Indus Valley Partners that time.
Right. Okay.
Like, it was giving me enough and more opportunity to learn.
Mm.
So it was there. So I was like, yeah, sure. Then after Oracle, towards I think 2015 and 2016, at that point in time, Ankur again, he was working on Goalwise that time. He reached out saying, hey, we have built this site, okay, and this is into mutual funds. Can you have a look and see what is there, what is not there, and all. So I had a look. Then there were a lot of issues with the site. Then I made a list. Okay, you need to fix this, and this is how you do it. These are the problems if you don't do this, etc., etc. And then one thing led to another, and then we started like, okay, like let me only do it for you. So it's
Okay.
like fine, yeah.
Right.
So, and that's how it started.
Okay.
Goalwise.
And what gave you the courage to leave Oracle and move to Goalwise?
I think I think it's a personality trait. I did not need courage. So it's like, yeah, let's do it.
Let's see, figure out.
That time I was in Hyderabad. I moved from Hyderabad to Bangalore
Okay.
for the startup.
Right.
I think I moved like 2 days after quitting Oracle. I think 2 days later I was working here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. No notice period. I mean,
Notice period I served.
yeah. Okay. After that, just
Last
you
day,
directly
next day,
entered
yeah.
Goalwise.
1 day for transport.
Right.
Next day I was
Okay. So there's something that people talk about, like, don't work with your friends professionally, right? So you and Ankur have known each other for a long time. So.
all that is there, like for people who have become friends later in life. The people you become friends with when you are in your childhood, all this theory does not apply.
Right. And how long did you guys work on Goalwise?
I think 5 years, I guess, 2016 onwards.
Okay.
From its launch till its acquisition.
So you utilize all your knowledge from Indus Valley and
Yes,
helped
Indus
you-
Valley and Oracle
the
both.
scale.
Both.
How many investors did Goalwise have in terms of customers?
I don't recall that at this point in time.
Okay. And in 2020 you exited.
In 2020.
Yeah. So
It did not exit. It got acquired by Niyo. So
right,
we
exactly,
also joined Niyo along with Goalwise as the Goalwise team.
yeah. So when your startup gets acquired, right, then it's kind of like you're going back to that employee life, right? So was it like that, or how was it like in Niyo?
No, it wasn't like that. Yes, we were all employees officially of Niyo, but Niyo let us run Goalwise independently. Yes, we rebranded Goalwise from Goalwise to Niyo Money. That was more to keep in line with the names and branding designs and branding guidelines for the parent company. But Niyo allowed us to function independently.
Right. Okay. So what's the difference that you found working in an MNC like Oracle and then in Indian fintech, now one of the largest fintechs, right? So what are the major differences you found?
There are pros and cons to this aspect. So pros of working at an MNC, life is very stable, work life. You are not worried about what's not going to work tomorrow. And this I'm talking about very specifically from my Oracle example, not from any other MNC because I worked only at one. life at Oracle is you get actually work-life balance.
Okay.
It's a product company. It provides services also. It has its own products. Everybody in engineering knows about Oracle database. It is synonymous with database, Oracle, though they have other products as well. Other thing which came with working at Oracle was that it opens doors which you wouldn't know existed, just the brand name Oracle. So that for a smaller company, those doors will not open. Those doors, they won't even know that those doors exist. At the same time, it is huge. To get one thing done, it will take 6 months.
Right.
Okay, there are a lot of things that need to be done, tested, reviewed, approval, why it is required, not required. And understandably so, it's not a small product. Like, they are running a database. I cannot simply go and make a change there. Like the value chain planning software, half the planet manufacturing is planned on that one. I cannot send something to production which is like untested, unplanned. No, suddenly manufacturing industry will stop working. So it's not easy. One of the funniest things which I remember, first thing that my manager told when I started working on it, there are 3,500 flags in this software that you can use to change the behavior of the software.
Okay.
So you think of those so many toggle buttons. There are 3,500 toggle buttons on the UI, which will change the behavior of this planning software.
So which means the manufacturing will get affected.
Yes. Okay. How you want the planning for the manufacturing to happen. There are 3,500 levers that you can pull.
That was the kind of impact, of power you had.
That was the kind of complexity that software had.
Right.
And different flags did different jobs, and everybody used their own specifications. So that was important.
Okay.
That is the upside. You see things, you see process, you see the outcomes of that process. The downside is things work slow, things move slow. In a fintech startup, things move really fast. Okay. While that things move fast, you also have the added responsibility to keep it right in the first go itself. Because you are in a fintech startup.
Right.
Because there are regulations to be followed, there are compliances to be met. Okay, and you are dealing with somebody else's money. So it's always important that the fundamentals are right, that things work. You may not be shipping 100 features in a day, but it should not be like the feature that you have shipped has caused somebody to lose money. So that is not a good feeling, either for the customer or for the company. So that is important. Fintech startup, different domain. Yeah, things move fast. Yeah, and being a startup, you can make whatever product you can imagine.
Right. So I believe you were a VP at
Niyo. Yes.
Right. And how did your work look like? As in, with a lot of people you're managing?
Yes, there were multiple teams that I was managing at Niyo. There was lending project, there was remittances project, there was wealth project, there was banking projects. So a good part of my day went in people management. Also, a good part of my day went in technical architecture design also.
And from there, how did the idea of serving NRIs come along, and how did Belong happen?
So this has a couple of things. When we were doing Goalwise, that time also we had a lot of NRI customers. And when we started doing Niyo, we also saw a lot of incoming requests from NRIs for the same product. So that is what helped me, build more conviction in this segment.
Right.
Like, yes, NRIs are a set of people who are very underserved. that I think that is one of the things, like two different companies, different products, both of these products NRIs are looking for, but cannot be served properly. So we need to build something which is dedicated for this.
So you, Ankur, and your team got together.
Yes.
But right. So right now you're the sole person. I mean, you're the person who's heading product at Belong, right?
Engineering and product. Product, I would say ki it's mostly Ankur, but engineering, development, and information security, and fair bit of compliance.
Right. Okay. So while building Belong, what was your mindset? As in, you've learned a lot in the past few years, right?
Yes.
You've already built a product, Goalwise. It got acquired. So was it the same ideology with which you built Goalwise? Was it the same ideology while building Belong, or you had a change? You had a better thought. You know better how to restructure this product.
Yes, Goalwise played a good role. I think a major role in deciding that yes, we need to serve NRIs and Fintech is the way to go. Niyo, built more conviction that Fintech is the right thing to do for me. And the thing which locked in that the Fintech is the right thing to do, is the only thing to do for me, was when I was discussing something with Ankur and like ideating on what needs to be done next. We, for a brief period of time, were dabbling with an idea of e-commerce or something non-fintech related, and I was running in my head how people will come and pay for a product, and the first thought that came to my mind is we need to do third-party verification. For e-commerce, you don't need to do third-party verification. You can buy a product and he can pay for you. In fintech, it doesn't work that way. So that's when I realized, okay, I am so engrossed, like so deeply entrenched in fintech that I cannot see or think anything outside this.
Right. So doesn't all these regulatory...
Everything right now I look at is, okay, can I do this? No, this regulation does not allow that. But that regulation does allow? No. Can I do that? No, I cannot do that. The first answer that anybody asks me, can I do this? Can I do that? Is no, you can't do this.
Okay. So for a techie like yourself, if other developers are watching this, to build a product and to be a CTO or a VP at a company, tech skills are not just enough, right? You need people skills as well. You need managerial skills as well. So how do you think you developed that skill?
Engineering skills, from tech skills perspective, I had enough and more exposure during my career, both at Oracle, at IVP, and then later at Niyo also. Managerial skills, primarily I developed at Niyo.
Okay.
When I started managing multiple teams on different products. So it has its nuances. Not everybody is the same. Not every team is the same.
Right.
Okay. So different people have different motivators. So as a manager, it is important to know what motivates your team.
Right.
That is one of the most important things that a team can, it's either going to make a team or break a team. That is one. Another important thing which I learned, especially for engineering teams, is you need to lead from examples. Okay. So that is one thing which I think has worked for me in past for all my teams. I still code at Goalwise. I still coded at Niyo. I always coded all my life, even when I'm, doing fully managing teams also. So I think that one bit that, while he is the CTO, while he is the VP, he still reviews our code. He still codes himself. And he still does things ground up. Though I could not do it as much as I would have liked, and because of other responsibilities, but it is important to make sure that the team knows that yes, he is somebody who's willing to get his hands dirty.
Right.
Like he will jump into.
Don't just preach, but be with them.
Preach.
Yeah.
Like as that is my philosophy. Like if I can't do it myself, I don't think I can tell somebody else to do it.
Okay. Get your hands dirty. That's the point.
Get my hands dirty. And this is one of the things when I hire somebody, I tell this very clearly to them, among other things, that I'm your biggest competition. If I have to do it myself, I will do it myself. Then I don't think I need you.
Right.
Yeah, that is very clear.
Understood. Yeah. So how big is your team right now in Belong?
10 people.
10 people. And what's your hiring philosophy, if I ask?
Yeah, from a hiring perspective, what I look for is to add value to the team. Whatever we have, if somebody is coming in, they should be at par with what we have. So I'm not looking to hire somebody who is going to join and then learn and come at par.
Right.
So that we try to figure out during our interview periods, during our probation before you become a full-time employee. That is the time either we get to know you are already at par, you can hit the ground running, you understand our complexities, or I don't think you are cut out for this.
Right.
That is one thing. That because it's a very fast-paced development environment, and if you are taking so much time, so you become a liability. And because then I need somebody from an existing, somebody from the team to handhold you in everything.
Yeah.
That's again, it becomes the same thing. Now, if I would have told the existing guy, he would have done it and we would have moved on to the next item. Now that item is also not done and he is spending time hand-holding you like 4 months later. So that is not something that I am looking forward to. To keeping things in the same line, we have very short notice periods. Most companies have like 60 days, 90 days. We have very short notice period. If somebody wants to leave, our entire thing is like, have you documented what you have done? Have you given KT to somebody who has done the day these 2 activities are done, next day, or thank you.
Okay.
So it is in line with what we believe the team should be like. Yeah.
Right. So and over the probation period, like 4 months, 6 months, you'll understand if a person is a good fit for your team.
Yeah, 3 months probation period.
Right. Okay. So now let's talk about Belong, right? A bit deep into Belong. So how long did it take for you to ship this product, the product that it is right now?
So there were multiple layers to building this product. We launched the first retail product out of Gift City for NRIs. So when we started this journey, there were not a lot of things in place. So it's a fintech product. There has to be, first of all, regulations in place which will allow you to do things. There has to be willing partners to accept that regulation, go out of their way to do things. Then there is the compliance that you need to get sign off from. Then there is the licenses, the requirement for the licenses that needs to be completed, and then the actual engineering comes. So engineering is the easy part because it is certain. Other things which will allow you to engineer something, that is the difficult part. Okay. So we started working early this year on the product. Once we had the initial idea, the designs were all done. We started working early in the year, and I think in 4 months' time, we built our first app and shipped it out. It has been out there now for almost 3 months now. Yeah, and in this duration, we have shipped one more product which is the mutual funds. It is currently in NFO phase, and I think next week it is going to be in an ongoing stage, like a proper mutual fund. Next month we are shipping more stuff. There's the first IPO which is going to come out of Gift City. The video KYC circular has come out. We will be shipping and building that and shipping that out also along with the IPO. Also, there are other mutual funds which are getting launched out of Gift City. All those mutual funds also will onboard onto our app.
Right.
So any product that is coming out of Gift City, we are trying to put that in our app as soon as possible. So if you have done your KYC through our app, you will be able to access any and every product that is coming out of Gift City.
Right. And how hard is it to integrate a new product?
I would like to take a step back on this and let you know on how I envisioned this before even the first line of code was written. And this is coming a lot from the learnings from Goalwise. Okay. So in Goalwise, we did not see ahead of time when it came from an engineering perspective a lot. We thought, okay, we will do this one activity and ship it out. Okay, and then as and when the influx of requests come from the users, we will modify and do as needed. Okay, that put me in a spot. Okay, it was difficult. Everything was a monolith. Okay, so changing one thing, now it became like a folklore. If somebody knows what to change, where to change, they can change it very easily. If somebody new has to do it, first they have to learn this folklore, and only then they will be able to change it. So this is something which I did not want to repeat in Belong. So we took this step as to decision very early on to keep things very modular.
Okay.
So everything in Belong as of today is plug and play. Okay. So it is to the extent that if we want one piece to be plugged out of our app and plugged into someone else's app, it is a week's job. So that it is that modular at this point. It comes at a cost, and not a lot of things that we could have done much easily. It being a monolith takes a little bit more time, but it gives us a lot of flexibility. So I think that is a trade-off that I think I'm happy with right now.
Especially because it's a new regulator, new product.
Yes.
The entire concept of Gift City is new.
Yes.
So I think they are figuring out what all new products has to be added, right? So I think it's very important for an app to have that modularity.
That modularity is very important.
Yeah.
For the app.
Yeah. So you said the app has been around for just 3 months, and you just hit $1 million in AUM. Congrats for that.
Thank you.
So when you build an app, especially in the fintech space, what do you do to make sure that it works smoothly? Because a lot of factors has to come together, right?
Yes. Smoothly, the first and foremost thing, for any user, the app should not crash, because that's a put off for any user. And also, it's a trust factor that is like, hey, this app keeps crashing. Okay. So these two things are important. Another thing that is important is to keep things simple from a user's perspective. You do this, 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 and you're done. Okay. The user should not be like, okay, now what do I do? So that is another important thing for a smooth user journey in the app. Yeah, I think we have taken care of these two things in the app, and also the feedbacks that we have got from the users is that they really like the design. Even before you use the app, you see the app. So if it is appealing to you and you like the design, from a user's point of view, if you are feeling good while using the app, from a design's perspective, it's good light on your eyes, easy on your eyes, feels is good. If minor issues also happen, users are kind enough to, okay, okay, let me just restart and let me just kill and see, maybe it's a small issue.
Right.
Okay. So a lot of things have to come into play because it is near to impossible to ship out everything perfect at the pace at which we ship out products.
Right. And can you tell us a bit more about what are the design? Do you use any design philosophies within the app to make it easy for customers to use the app, make people love the app?
I'm not sure if I have a design philosophy, but fundamentally what I feel is like, do not ask the user to do too many things. If you can do it for the user on their behalf with their consent, do it.
Right.
So keeping that in line, generally what we see is like we ask people to fill up a form in the app. In general, in a fintech app, when you're doing your KYC for the first time, you are asked to fill a form wherein you will fill your name, your address, etc., etc. You will type. So, and then this needs to be validated against some or the other document. Okay. So what we do in the app is like, okay, if this needs to be validated against the document, what is it that we are going to do if it does not match what the user has filled? What for a KYC, the documents that you provide, authenticated documents, is the source of truth. It is irrespective of what you say. It is only what you can provide as proof is your KYC. Okay, then why bother telling the user to fill it? There's no need for the user to fill it.
Yeah.
So this is so with users' consent, on users' behalf, given the documents that the users have provided, we do a lot of things like that. So it makes their life much easier. Like, okay, just click, 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 done.
So whatever you can, you do it.
Yeah, we do it.
And if there is nothing can be done, you go back to the user.
For example, adding of a nominee. We can't decide on user's behalf who the nominee is. Only the user can choose that. So that is something the user needs to fill.
Right. I think the overall design language of a product is also very important, right?
Yes.
So the first time I heard about Belong, the first thing I checked was the website. So from there itself, you understand there is a design language, right? Because the website is very unique, really lovely. So I think it helps the product to gain people's love, right? If the product is well designed. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you have been taking feedbacks from customers in this regard also.
Yes, that is true. So we constantly take feedbacks, and some of our early adopter customers have been providing us good feedback, and we have been incorporating them both in the app also and in the website also.
Right. And we spoke about making the app work smoothly, right?
Yes.
So what if there's a sudden inflow of users? For example, one of your marketing campaigns became a hit. Suddenly there's a lot of users coming in. So how do you make sure that the app doesn't break at that point?
So there are two parts to this. So as a CTO, making sure that the app doesn't break, I need to be informed. Like, okay, something like this as an activity is going to happen. So we being a startup and me also being a co-founder at the same startup, always have this information when and what is happening. After that information is available, from a technical perspective, with given the kind of infrastructure available today on cloud, handling scale is a function of money. Okay, so we are able to handle a lot of scale with Influx. We have a very dynamic infrastructure setup. I think I personally feel most companies aspire to be there where we already are. In a fintech journey, in a startup fintech journey, most companies aspire to have the kind of infrastructure that we have set up. So we don't log in to AWS or GCP to do anything. Most of it is run through pipelines. Everything is automated. Most of the things that scale up and down are done automatically. And yeah, it's just you bring more people into the app, infrastructure, the code and everything will scale automatically. So now this is coming from a CTO perspective, from a technical perspective, but app is not the only thing that needs to be able to scale when there is an influx. Now with more people, there are more people who come on chat to ask their queries. There are more people who have done their KYC, who have placed the orders, who have made the purchases. So that puts additional pressure on the operations team to do their job. Okay, so when such an influx happens, it's not just the app that needs to scale, it's the company that needs to cope with that scale.
True. So all the teams has to work together.
Yes.
Understood. So you all earlier mentioned about the regulatory side of things, right? So fintech is a really tricky field to build in because of all the regulations happening around. So with all these regulations around, how do you ensure that you comply with all those regulations while still keeping the product simple?
Read more of the regulations.
And figure out how to make things easy for the
Yes.
customer. Right. So how
There's no working around a regulation. If the regulation says you need to do this, you need to do that.
So as a CTO, you keep a track of all the regulations that's coming up from Gift City.
Yeah. There is no workaround for this.
Okay. So we talked about the regulations, right? Fintech is not an easy sector to build in with all these regulations around. So how do you ensure that you comply with all these regulations while still keeping the product simple?
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to clarify, there is no workaround for a regulation. We are dealing with other people's money, and we need to ensure that we are compliant with all the regulations that are there in order to safeguard the people's money. Now we are working out of Gift City. The regulator is IFSCA, and it is a sole regulator. It's like it's a single regulator for all the products that comes out of Gift City. So now in India side, there is RBI, there is SEBI, there is PFRDA, there is IRDA. So different kinds of financial products have different regulators. But in Gift City, there is a single regulator. Now you can imagine the kind of compliances that are required for every product that we go live with. So it takes a lot of time to get us compliant even before we ourselves can test something on our own accounts in production. So for us to be able to place a purchase or place a trade, we need to first be able to reach that stage that we are able to place a trade. Okay, and that requires a lot of go ahead from the regulators, from the partners, exchanges, the banks, and the compliances needs to be in place. This is very important for us, and it's a non-negotiable in the company. Whatever we are building and whatever we are planning ahead in our roadmap are only those items which are regulatorily fine, like regulators have given an okay for building those products only. Right. So that is something that we make sure that every time a new regulation or an addendum to an existing regulation comes up, we go through it, we make sure that the entire company is aware of something like this has come up. We debate ourselves, what is the meaning of this regulation, how does it affect us, does it change our roadmap? If there is confusion on any segment in the regulation, we reach out to the regulators. They are very friendly, very welcoming in clarifying those doubts. That is one thing which I really appreciate about IFSCA. Regulators are very helpful. Actually, they want to see us succeed. So that is one thing that is very good about Gift City. And also with the new regulations that are coming in, I can see, like I have a gut feeling that these are going to help us scale much faster as compared to the previous versions of the same regulations.
Right. So I was speaking to Ankur last day, and he mentioned about this video KYC regulation that's coming up. So I work with a lot of investors, right? A lot of clients. So no NRI, for any NRI, it's very hard to invest in India, right? Through the normal mutual fund route, because the paperwork is huge. Video KYC is nearly impossible to do if they're not here. Yes. So all those stuff is there, right? But with this one regulation, everything is going to change, right? So have you started to integrate that product, or is it about to get live? So what's the update on that?
Okay. So we started building the video KYC piece even before our product had gone live.
Okay.
Okay. So we were in touch with IFSCA. They already were thinking about bringing a regulation, something on the lines of video KYC, but there was nothing formalized at that point in time. So introducing a change in KYC is a major change, both from a regulator's perspective also and from a fintech startup perspective also.
Right.
Because the change in KYC not just affects your app, it affects processes. So your operations process will change, your app definitely is going to change. Things you may be able to do right now with a change in KYC flow, you may not be able to do. And things you are unable to do with a change in KYC flow, you may be able to do. Okay. So KYC is one of those things which any regulation comes and relates to KYC and AML guidelines. We take that very seriously, and also, like, it may not be a regulation, it may be just an email that we are thinking on these lines, or a discussion in a closed room. Hey, we are thinking on this, and this is, I'm saying this with the regulators, maybe there, or in something in the closed room discussion, or something in the consultation paper. We take that very seriously, and we make sure that we dedicate some effort in building something towards that. Right. So that once it materializes, we don't have to rework or stop doing what we are doing on the day that regulation is going live. So that is how we will be able to ship out video KYC in the coming couple of weeks.
Right. So as soon as they allows it, it will be there on Belong.
It will be there on Belong.
Right. I think that's a great philosophy to have as well, because startups don't even have time to handle what they already have, right?
Yeah.
That's when you are doing something for the future.
Yes.
You're not even sure if that will happen or not. You have still put an effort on that.
That is correct. Like, it's a bet that I am willing to take on, especially on being. It's easier to, as a co-founder, it is easier to have that piece in place and not use it than need it and not have it.
Understood. Appreciate it. Very, very good thought to have. Yeah. So, so for an investor, this might be just a new feature, right, on the app. But for the team, it might be a lot of sleepless nights in the background, right? So let's not just talk about video KYC, mutual fund, IPO, every feature that you're working on. So for customer, it's another module, right? So how does it look like in the back end? So when you're shipping a new product?
Lots of coffee.
Okay.
And lots of sleepless nights.
Yeah.
Like you said. So every time we are shipping something in a new feature on the app or a new product on the app, we make sure that everybody in the company is on the same page about that. Maybe we are adding something which is going to put a lot of pressure in operations. So it should not come as a surprise to them. Maybe we are shipping something where we are expecting a lot of inflow of customer chats. So it should not be a surprise for them either. Like, hey, what did you release in this app? Okay, so that is something which is very important. Because app is not the company. The app is a part of the company. Like, app is one of the things that the company has built. There are other things in the company which make sure that what you see on the app functions.
Right.
Somebody has submitted the KYC, but nobody is reviewing that KYC. You can't proceed. Okay, so let's say maybe there are some 100 KYCs today. Suddenly, because of a marketing campaign, so 500, 800 KYCs happened in a day. So it should not be surprise for the operations team. We let them know, hey, this is something that we are shipping out. Expect not to go home for next 2-3 days.
Okay.
So they are also mentally prepared.
Right.
So it's just easier that way for everybody.
Okay, understood. So this might be how every startup is.
I hope so. Yeah, I think this is how startups generally function.
Yeah, this is what we call a startup energy, right? So I'm pretty sure that, along this journey, there might have been cases where, some feature in the app broke, right? So
Yes.
can you recollect any of those moments and, tell us how the experience was?
Oh yes, the first launch that we did,
Yeah.
everything worked.
Mm-hmm.
The FD product didn't work.
Wow, okay. That was the first product, right?
That was the first product that we launched.
Okay. And the only product at that time.
And the only product on the app at that time.
Yeah.
It did not work.
Okay. Right.
Okay. So again, we were working, day and night with our partner banks to figure out what is going on, what is wrong, why is it not working.
Mm.
So again, we, we found the issues, both Android and iOS, we built and shipped again, and then it started working.
Okay.
So every time there is an issue, there are some things, in your control which you can fix much faster. Some things have, external dependencies, or some things just take its own cycle to be able to do.
Yeah.
Like an app release, even though I have built it, I can't release it today. Like I will have to upload to Play Store or an App Store, and then that Play Store and App Store approval will be taking its own sweet time. So not a lot of things can be done instantly.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, given the previous experiences that I have had in the previous companies, and the kind of experience that I have had now at Belong, I think there are a few things which we have placed in the app which to some extent allows us to reduce this cycle time, but only in certain cases only. Some things which are there which we just can't fix it as soon as we would have liked to.
That's not in your control.
That's not in our control.
So for that specific case, right, the FD problem, how long did it take to fix it?
I think 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Okay. And what did the customers say?
They're not very happy at that point in time.
Okay.
And most of the customers at that point in time, we were in CUG. So most of the customers were friends and family, and my friends were like ecstatic that it didn't work. Like, arey, like a decade later also you can't build it.
You have some good friends.
Yes.
Okay.
Every time I told them ki I will ship it, fix it and ship it, they are like, arey, I clicked the button, now also it is not working.
Okay. Right. So one topic we haven't touched upon until now is data privacy, right? Because this being a fintech product, handling people's money. So data privacy is very important. You're handling many sensitive data, right? So how do you handle this data? So what's happening there?
Since the app is primarily at this point targeted towards NRIs, we not just have to be compliant with the data privacy laws in India, we have to be compliant in the with the data privacy laws of the country from which the customer is coming also. Okay, like let's say if somebody is coming from Europe, so we have to be GDPR compliant. Somebody is coming from UAE, let's say, so we have to be compliant with the UAE data privacy law. The good part here is that almost all jurisdictions, there is a 90% overlap of what needs to be done. Okay, so if we do a superset, we will be compliant everywhere. The hard part here is it's very stringent. So the data privacy, while in India now the DPDP Act is there and people have started working towards it, it has been in place in other countries and very stringently followed also for a while. So it is very difficult, for somebody to get away with and a breach in data privacy. Okay. So we take that very seriously, and this was something that we decided on day one itself, that everybody who onboards with us as a employee of the company, or even if somebody who we are working with as our partners in different fields, I share with them a list of PII data. Okay, it is available to everybody in the company. Anybody can go and say, and we tell them ki if you are looking at this, you should not be looking at this in whatever file it is. please let me know. How did you get hold of this data? So that is something very clearly circulated in the company. How we manage it, the data is only if it is not on an app, then your personal data is not visible. There is no personal data written in the logs. There is no personal data openly kept in the database. Even if I wanted to log in today as an admin, I can't see it. Like I will have to log in as a customer. Only then I can see my own data.
Right. Okay. So Belong is pretty serious about data.
Yeah, it is I'm very serious about this.
Right. The reason why I'm asking this is because nowadays we hear a lot of complaints from customers that they get a lot of calls from these random loan apps, right?
Yes.
So there are a lot of fintech apps out there who gives you some free services, and all of us, clicks that button thinking that everything is free, but nothing is actually free, right?
Correct.
So what should a customer do in that case? This is a general question, not specific to Belong.
Yes. A couple of things here. Like I also am a customer, not just an entrepreneur. If you don't need it, don't provide your data to anybody. Now, given the specific example that you mentioned, that a lot of get a loan calls people get, a lot of apps provide a free CIBIL score or a free financial health checkup like that.
Right.
If you are not in the market looking for a loan, you don't need a financial health checkup. Okay, that is one thing.
Just because of the feature, don't go and use it.
If you are not looking for it, don't do it. Okay. Again, data privacy, how it works is that even if it is done, that is between you and that company alone. There is nobody else that it should be able to view that information. So which is something we have made sure at Belong. If it is between you and the app itself. Okay, there is nobody else who can go anywhere or download something and view. That is not there at Belong. So this is, you get a random call. So to be honest, there is a lot of marketing data that can be bought from some place or the other. All this is because of lack of this ability. So I'll give you an example. If I sign up on a B2B service provider today for any specific item, I will get 5 calls from their competitors. Okay, like, hey, are you interested in this product? We are providing this product. But that should not have happened. I signed up with one player. Okay, unless that particular company is giving out the data to its competitors, I don't think any company will do that actively to share data with competitors. So how is a competitor getting to know that I have signed up? Okay. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, and this is exactly what the DPDP Act is trying to prevent in India. Like your data is only between you and the company that you have signed up with. Should not be downloadable, should not be shareable without your consent.
Unfortunately, that's not the case in India.
But that's not the case in India.
Yeah, and also recently discussions came up regarding dark patterns in different fintech apps, right? Or these nudges in the app that makes you, subconsciously click some button, or that conscious design choices, right?
Yes.
So I personally think that takes away the trust from an app, right? So what is your thought on that?
I agree with you on that. It takes the trust away from the app. While dark pattern helps from numbers perspective. Okay, I wanted the customer to click on this button. He will subscribe to something somehow. Because he has clicked on this button, he will have subscribed to something. So that number on somebody's dashboard has increased. But from an end customer perspective, when that whatever he has subscribed to gets charged, that is when he will realize, I never did this. And then he will come onto the chat and say, hey, I want a refund, or when did I do this? Why are you doing this? And then we'll say, ki, hey, when you clicked that in that flow, you clicked this also. When you were doing a flow, when you were paying your bill for, let's say, credit card, you also signed a mandate. Okay, so that is something that I didn't want to sign a mandate. I just wanted to make a bill payment as a one-time payment.
Right. So this is one of the instances where the same things can be used for good and bad, right?
Yes.
So design is generally, we all think of design as a good thing, but this is one instance where design can be used to trick you, right? Trick the customer.
And one of the simplest example is that we are so used to, when we are doing online transactions, okay, I am doing an online transaction. I am on the website. Everything is legit. For this website, I am supposed to get an OTP. I am getting an OTP. I entered that OTP also. But did we notice that OTP was not for payments, but it was for a mandate registration?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So from a mandate registration perspective, I have given the consent. But from a customer's perspective, I wanted to make a bill payment.
Right.
So I did not want to register a mandate.
Yeah. So only when the bill gets deducted next month, they'll realize.
They will realize, hey, how did this automatically happen?
Right. I think these are things that customers have to be consciously very careful about, right? So,
yes.
Yeah, there's very little that any regulator can do here. Yeah.
Yeah, because I gave that OTP. I consented to that OTP, that mandate registration.
Yeah. However confusing the app gets, you have to double check properly.
Yeah,
that's an advice for every customer.
Yeah. Like especially when you are entering an OTP, just make sure you are entering the OTP for the right thing.
Understood. Okay. Right. So we have discussed about a lot of stuff about the tech behind, the team behind, how Belong works. You experience all this stuff. So we are closing it towards the end of the podcast. One question I would like to ask is, how much of AI do you integrate in the whole development process right now?
So we do use AI extensively in our development process, but it is not the deciding factor. AI is used as a helping tool and not the primary go-to item in any of the development right now. Think of it like at this point in time, I'm sure different companies have different approaches to this. At this point of time, we use AI as think of it like somebody who is going to do the grunt work for a developer. So we use AI for grunt work right now.
Okay. Sort of like an enabler.
And as an enabler, something a developer, we know we need to do some 5 items before we start working on some things. We can automate that, but we know depending on what we have done previously in different services, AI now has the capability to learn a lot from our previous existing codes. So we use that as an enabler for quicker turnaround times, but not as the decision maker ki, hey, build me this product. No.
Right. Okay. So it's always the humans who are doing this.
Yeah.
With a bit of help from AI, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. So when speaking to Savitri also, she's the CEO, right? So she was saying that Belong doesn't integrate AI in customer support, right? Because it's very important to have a human touch, right? But this is where something, this is where you can integrate AI, but don't give it too much power. Just use it to make your work easy.
Yes. Right. So AI is very good at right now being, an assistant. It's very good at it. Okay. It can churn through a lot of data, go through a lot of things, and give you things much faster. Okay, compared to a human, and especially in support, like I'm not sure how many people have done this, but the moment you see a bot on a chat, the first thing that you type is, I want to talk to a human. I do that because I know you are not going to be able to resolve what I have an issue. Okay?
Right.
If the product could not resolve it, I am pretty sure you cannot resolve it. Okay, that is why I am on chat and I want to talk to a human being. You are just delaying that inevitable, point in the tree where I'm going to now can I connect to a human? Yes.
Yeah, I think currently all the chatbots are just bringing together the points in the website to a chatbot, right? Because these are basic things we can always go to a website and find out.
Yeah.
The chatbot is basically bringing it to a chat form. That's all the chatbots are doing nowadays, right? But a person, a customer comes to a chatbot to solve maybe a high-level problem that it can't solve.
Yes.
Then it gets delayed further and further.
Further and further, and it just becomes more and more frustrating for the end customer.
Yeah.
Okay, like because any AI chatbot will try to resolve it. It will start answering things which will not be relevant to the customer, and he will just get frustrated. So that is not something that we want to provide as customer support, or the experience that the customers face when using Belong.
Right.
So this is why we do a human touch always on the chat.
Right. That's lovely to hear. So thank you so much, Ayush, for all the insights. I wish everything goes smoothly for Belong, but I'm sure it won't go so smooth for your team.
It will go.
But all the very best, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So much.